Hello, and for our Pandemictivity today we're going to look at a Bach prelude. This is VWV 924, and it's one of his little teaching pieces. I'm going to provide the score edited into this video with some little notes that I'm going to make along the way. So you can either follow that or you can get your own copy either way. And the purpose of this today, one, of course, is we're all under quarantine and we're carrying on making music and connecting with each other, not less than before but more than before, because we need this. Two, for those who are professionals or professionals in training, we need to do something to keep our skills going and to keep learning. So those are the main reasons. What's going on here in this piece, and the reason I want to talk about it is because we can look at it from a tradition of traditional keyboard pedagogy and from a position of Partimento, and we get very different results when we look at it from these two perspectives. So first of all, there are something like 250 or more notes here, and it's a little one-page piece. It's not huge, but 250 notes is quite a lot. And so this would be, for a typical student, intermediate level student, would be a fair amount of work, to get through all this and figure out everything that's going on. And I want to show you as we go through this video how actually there aren't 250 or more things to think about. There are only a handful of things that you have to know if you understand the thinking behind Partimento. So first of all, a few notes about the piece itself. We do have this kind of standard figuration with a bass on the downbeat and then 3 rising arpeggiated 16th notes. This is a rather typical figuration of the Baroque. And so actually it follows, if you know this, or those are both pieces that do figuration for a long time and then they stop and have a big long note in the bass and then something else happens. Notice that this is the same structure as the C minor prelude and B flat prelude from Walter Clavier, probably others that I'm not thinking of. So it's a very standard form, and we'll say a little bit more about why it's structured that way. First of all, details that actually are not the most important thing. These little ornaments, I did play them in what you'll hear, and most of them are just little mordents where we have just the note and the note below and back to the note. I do those on the beat. I always think this sounds terrible. And most people end up playing it late if they try to go ba-da-da, ba-da-da, da-da-dum, ba-da-da. They're always late. So I just think it sounds better on the beat. Yes, somebody can argue that historically this or that is supposed to happen, but I just always do what sounds better. So then in the fourth measure we have an unusual one, and I'll start making some notes here. This one right here, and you'll notice it's unusual because it has this weird little tail before the rest of it, okay? And the tail comes from below, like it's going up into it. And what that actually refers to is that it's coming below from the A, and then, and so it's sort of connecting the A to the C. And fortunately, the way this works, you have just the right amount of notes to do 8 notes. So you can play them as 30-second notes. So on the beat you play A, B, and then everything fits together very nicely as far as rhythmic alignment. Now this one comes down from above, and so that's actually going to start on A and come down into the G sharp and then resolve again to the A, like this. So it's the opposite. Then we have this one, and again, same thing. It's going to come above from below from the D. So those are the most unusual ornaments here. So now let's talk about the difference between a traditional keyboard pedagogy approach and a Partimento approach. In a keyboard pedagogy approach, essentially what we're trying to do is learn how to recite this. We're taking dictation and reciting it back. So the page says something to me, and I have to say back exactly what the page said. And included in this tradition is just, a little bit of a sense of disapproval about, having your own little ideas and adding your own thoughts. And it's much more like just do exactly what Bach said and don't ask any questions, okay? And the problem with that, I can't erase anymore, so I'm stuck with this face now. Okay, I deserve that. The problem with this approach is that we don't end up asking some questions that we should ask. And so if, for example, you asked many students about this piece, you'd say, what key is it in? What tonality is it in? And they would know that it's in C major, but they would go, and they'd stare at the score for a second, and then they'd say C major. That is not foremost in their minds as they're playing, which to me is very, very interesting. Because you don't actually have to know that kind of stuff. All you have to know is what the page says, and you have to recite it back with your fingers, and you're fine. In the Partimento tradition, a Partimento trained player is going to hear this piece very, very differently. Instead of hit that note, and then hit those notes, and hit that note, and hit those notes, and our main concern should be, what is this fingering, and this fingering, and this fingering, and what is this, and this, and this. Instead of those, the Partimento trained musician is going to notice something completely different. This is what that person will notice. And so on, to here, and then this pattern, and then this pattern, okay? That's the first thing a Partimento trained player will notice. What is the bass doing? These important motions in the bass. And the Partimento player is capable of recognizing that some of these bass notes are important and structural, and the piece is built around them, and other of them are incidental and connecting, and they're of secondary importance. Okay, now let me explain this exact bass motion. This motion is from 1 to 5 in the bass. And this motion is from 2 to 6. And, of course, 5 to 2 there. So what's happening? 1 to 5 to 2 to 6 to 3. What's happening is that the bass is rising by fifths. Every time. It's going up a fifth. Of course, we don't actually go up a fifth. We turn around and go down a fourth. Up a fifth. Depends which note you want to talk about here, but let's say down a fourth. And then the motion changes. Now we change here and the pattern stops. So the pattern goes that far. This is a well-known and long-established pattern in the Partimento tradition. It even has a name, okay? And the name is, I can't write with my finger, sorry. I'll just tell you, Fonte Romanesca, M-O-N-T-R-O-M-A-N-E-S-C-A, Fonte Romanesca. And what happens is, as the bass rises by fifths, in the upper voices, those bass notes are accompanied by a series of suspensions. And I'll play it for you here in the usual version that was taught by the masters. Here's where we start. As the bass comes up a fifth, the upper voices do this. And then that suspension resolves like this. And then the bass goes to the next note, and the upper voices do this. And then we go here. And now we're going to break off the motion and do something else. which I'll explain in a moment. Now notice, with these voices, the soprano is now suspending, and the soprano resolves. And as the bass moves, now the alto right here is suspending, the alto resolves, the bass moves, and now it's the soprano that's a suspension. It resolves. Now the alto is the suspension. Okay? So they trade who is providing the suspension. Here's what's so cool about this motion. Remember we started here? If I reverse these notes and put the alto above the soprano, everything still works. Okay, so the first way. The second way. All right, so now anyone trained in Partimento will hear this opening. Immediately recognize that. So first of all, I can almost instantaneously memorize this because I've been trained in Partimento. So all I need to recognize is, okay, the bass just moves, and then that, and then the bass moves, and then that, and the bass moves here. Okay, so I've got the first 2.5 bars instantly memorized. A. Okay, so and because I'm not memorizing note for note, I'm memorizing by how it works, I can now easily go I can transpose it to any other key instantly. And I was in B flat. And see, so I can instantly move it to any other key. Instant transposition without having to pick up each note and move it to another key. Oh, I'm in C, so I'm going to D, so the bass has to go up a step, so there's the bass, and this one has to go here, and this one has to go... It's like moving everything you own one sock and Lego brick and light bulb at a time, rather than just having a whole truck that does it. So anyway, that's one of the things that we gain from Partimento study, is this recognition of these motions and the voice leading patterns. And it makes it very, very easy to memorize it, to practice it, to play it, to transpose it, and of course to identify it when I hear it in other music. You get what's called an insider's understanding of music when you hear it. You know how they put it together. All right, so now what follows, beginning here, one of the things about this Fonte Romanesca is that it's not an unlimited pattern. If I keep going up fifths, I run into a wall. Whoa, what happened there? Yes, here we go. That is not an acceptable sound in 18th century music, okay? So the Fonte Romanesca can go on for a while, and then it just has to stop, and we have to get out. And there are various ways of getting out. There are various methods of escape from the Fonte Romanesca, but the favorite has been identified and kind of had articles and stuff written about it. There's a gentleman by the name of Vasily Biros at Northwestern University who has a cool article on this, and he has named it the Fonte Romanesca. So credit to Vasily for that. And what it is, we go up a fifth, and here's where we can't go any farther. We can't go up a fifth here. And so instead we go up a fourth, and we start this series of and usually about here we'd be done. Okay, so it's step up twice, drop thirds twice, step up twice, drop thirds twice, step up twice, okay? And in the right hand, you get this series of dissonant consonant pairs. So notice where the Monte Romanesca left us with the right hand. Suspension, suspension, etc. We're left here. And from there, I can very easily start this pattern of sevenths and sixths. Now sevenths have to resolve, so there it is. But here's another seventh. Here's another seventh. To a sixth. To a seventh. To a seventh. Sixth. Seventh. Sixth. Seventh. Sixth. Okay? And that's exactly what we have here, except it's instead of sevenths and sixths, we're doing seconds and thirds. Okay? So instead of this, we're doing this. And then instead of jumping down a third, he jumps down a sixth. So it's a little bit of an alteration, but I could easily substitute. I could easily substitute those thirds where Bach has sixths. Okay, so it's basically the same idea. But now he does this chromatically instead. And another cool chromatic alteration. So this is the end of the Fonte Romanesca. All right, and you can alter these chromatically as much as you want, and they're still essentially the same thing. Now, the third voice in the right hand is just like the incidental extra voice, and you have to fit it in there, and that doesn't really change the overall plan. So Monte Romanesca here, Fonte Romanesca here. So far in the first 1, 2, 3, 5.5 bars, there have been only 2 devices, 2 techniques. All right? It's very, very easy to remember 2 techniques when you've practiced them. It's very, very hard to remember 5 measures of 16th notes, which is 80 notes. I can remember 2 techniques a lot more easily than I can remember 80 notes. And this is why I often will say, people who are getting around improvising and playing very fluently and transposing, they're not thinking about more stuff than you are. They're thinking about less stuff than you are. That's why it's so easy. They're not thinking about all these things. They're not trying to move to a new house, moving one sock and Lego and light bulb at a time. They rented a truck. It's not that hard to drive a truck. Okay, let's look at what happens next. I know there are many, many questions that may arrive from the Monte Romanesca, Fonte Romanesca pairs. It's a very rich and interesting area of study, and but this is all I'll say about it today, is that I learned it from Partimento, and you can too. So anyway, what happens next is we end up approaching this pedal point, which begins right here. A pedal point is where you have something in the bass that just sits there, and the pedal point lasts until here. This is the pedal point on G, which is scale degree 5. And in Baroque music, there are only 2 types of pedal points, 1 and 5. There's no other possible pedal point. The purpose of a pedal point is that it generates expectation, tension, drama, and we're just waiting for it to resolve, especially when it's 5. When a pedal point is on 5, we just wait and wait and wait for something to finally happen, which is, of course, this, the final cadence. So let's look at what happens over 5. First of all, the fact that you have some of this is not any different from this harmonically. The fact that we're playing an ornament and jumping up and down by an octave is not different from just holding it harmonically. It's different as far as the effect and the texture and all that, but doesn't change the harmonic situation. Again, what does someone trained in traditional keyboard pedagogy see here? Well, they probably get really worried about the ornaments. You know, that's the first thing they ask their teacher. I don't know how to play these ornaments. My fingers are stupid. I don't know what to do. That's important, and that's a separate discussion, but that's not really the most important thing here. What a Partimento player will see here immediately is these outer intervals in the 16th notes. Okay? Whoa, sorry about that. It's not supposed to happen. And what we see is 7s going to 6s, going to 7s, going to 6s. Over and over and over again. Well, this is very, very well known. These patterns of 7 6s. So over the pedal point, this is just a way you can move around through tonal space downward. 7 6s always go downward. The 7 is usually on the strong beat because you feel the dissonance as a strong thing, and then the 6th is on a weak beat. The note that's in between is incidental. It matters, but it's not the crucial thing. And all this is doing is reaffirming the dominant pedal. Notice we could double the length of that if we wanted to. Keep going. See, I could go a long way, and it ends up having the same effect. All of this is also just reaffirming that. Now we get it as a long note. And again, notice the intervals. 6ths, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, and there finally we get something else. Okay, so this long series of 7 6s going down over a pedal point. This is very, very common, and if we studied the Partimento tradition, we're just keenly aware of the 7 6s and that they invert to if I do this, that inverts to. It inverts to 2 3s, and that often happens in music, so it's very easy to recompose this or to improvise on it, to change it, because we know exactly how it works. Then finally we get to here, and we sort of take a break and emphasize the dominant harmony for a minute, and then we're actually still playing around a little bit with these ideas of 7s and 6s. There's a 7th. And there, so we still have some of these 7 6s, although the other thing that's happening is he's playing around with, when you have a dominant pedal point, you can play around with where you are harmonically. You know, we're supposed to be here on this harmony, but I can also do the dominant of that. Here, and I can even do even try that. you can do a lot of things over the dominant harmony. So that's what's happening when he's getting into this chromatic stuff. Is he's wrapping embroidery around the possible harmonies that can happen, and you see that most clearly right here, where you have that harmony. Well, that's diminished seventh harmony, and it's spelled as F sharp diminished, which is the leading tone harmony of G. The dominant is supposed to be on G, and so he's doing the leading tone harmony of G, and then finally allowing it to resolve. Okay, so why is all this so important? For the amateur, who cares? I would say that what is the point of doing a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku puzzle or playing your favorite Mozart minuet? It's enjoyment. It's being alive and doing things that make you feel fully human and fully awake and fully alive. It's the intellectual pleasure of discovery and beauty. And the same sense of discovery and happiness that comes when you solve a puzzle, even though that's only recreation, is available in music. When you are able to do something besides recite, when you understand how it's made, and as you make your way through, you find all those little working pieces and you go, aha, I see what you did there, Johann Sebastian. I see what you did there. It's like admiring something that's beautifully built, whether you love cooking or woodwork or architecture or working on cars. You know, when you see something that's truly masterfully made, you want to know how it was done. Give me the recipe for that. How did you join those two pieces of wood? What did you do with the spark plugs to get it to hum like that? You know, that's something that we do because we're awake and we're alive and we're human. And this is the same thing that's available in music. How did you do that? How did you get that sound? How did you get that sense of drama or disorientation or wonderful arrival and, you know, all is well that ends well kind of feeling? So I think it's very, very valuable at an amateur level. At a professional level, I think it's self-evident, you know, the ability to hear and immediately comprehend as an insider, to be able to transpose, to be able to write, to be able to improvise. I think it's sort of is self-evident what's going on here. So all of these insights today into this little prelude, I would say really come from Partimento and from the voice leading structures that one learns in the Partimento tradition. So now we'll end, and I'll just play through the whole piece for you, and that will be the conclusion of our Pandemictivity for today. If you want to know more about any of these things, check in the description. I've got some resources there. And thanks for hanging out. Take care of each other. Keep your distance. Be well. Ciao.